Political foes, past and present. Take a look at the moment that President Trump took his seat from my coverage live earlier this morning. I just thought that was an extraordinary. Here it is again. And Hillary's just sort of staring straight ahead. So was that a snub? A lot of people said it was. Let's see what Jesse Waters, host of Waters World and co-host of The Five, thought about that moment today. Hello, Jesse.
Hi, Martha.
So what did you make of the talk about interpersonal dynamics? There was a lot going on there.
Yeah, there was a lot to look at. I mean, one guy shredding the other guy's legacy, the other guy wiretapped the other guy, the row before, you have the dossier getting thrown around. It's ugly. And think about some of the things they've said about each other. I mean, you are a foreign-born terrorist sympathizer. You are a mentally ill traitor. Hey, you're a rapist. Horrible things, yet they sat next to each other. I thought it was fine. I didn't see any snubs. It's a somber moment. They're in the first row. What are they going to reach across?
Well, I mean, look at Hillary. She just looked straight ahead. Mm-hmm. She a little nod there. I mean, for one thing, they can't reach across the entire aisle and shake everyone's hand.
Right.
And this also, just to remind people at home, this was a moment, before it was kind of jovial, people were chatting, but this was not that moment. Everyone was seated and ready for it to begin.
Yes.
So they're focused.
Right.
Then they brought the president in.
And you're supposed to sit there and look straight ahead. You're not supposed to take any other attention away. If you think about it, she acknowledged Melania, didn't really acknowledge President Trump. I mean, she wants to be president. Donald Trump said if he were president, he'd lock her up.
Yeah,
so
that makes things a little awkward.
Bad blood there, but I didn't think that it needed to be manufactured to such an extent where this is a controversy. I think everybody sat there politely and paid their respects to a higher power.
Go back. Let's put the video up one more time, because what I looked at the second time around is I like watching Marilyn Quayle. She's like, oh, this is going to be interesting.
She's like, get the popcorn out.
This is going to be interesting. And then, I don't know if you can see, but Dick Cheney was in the background. He also was watching the whole thing. He's like, I'm removed now. I don't really need to worry about this stuff anymore. But he watched every single.
Cheney's got his eyes on everything. Who knows what Cheney's up to?
But it's always extraordinary to see a collection of our nation's presidents all in that front row today. It was quite something.
Very special.
From beginning to end. Jesse, thank you
for
Martha. Ending the evening with me. It's great to have you with us, as always, on a Wednesday.
Ready to listen in, really, for the whole service. We're not going to talk a lot at all through all of this as the hearse arrives at the cathedral.
Well, I have to say I was struck when President Trump and Melania Trump came to the front row that it was as if a chill had descended on that front row. You had seen a lot of kind of chatty talk between the Clintons and the Obamas, the Carters. But when Donald Trump sat down, the greeting that he was given by Barack Obama and Michelle Obama was about as cold, about as cool as it could have been. It seemed like they exchanged hello, morning, and that was it. And at that point, they all stopped talking to each other. And obviously, yes, I agree with Ed, this is the greatness of America, but there also is a reality, and there are some ill feelings among some of the people in the front row. And I have to say that where you usually have a president's club and even people that ran against and maybe one beat the other, that doesn't seem to have been extended to President Trump when you see them sitting in that front row.
Although I will say, listening to Karl Rove depict the situation inside Blair House with the Bush family, it tells a very different story than what we saw between President Trump, then candidate Trump, and obviously the Bush family as he was running against the former Florida governor, Jeb Bush. Martha, we're waiting for the casket to be removed. It will be met here by the bishop, and then will make its way into the cathedral for a very planned out service that will have a lot of beautiful music throughout.
The family of President Bush will be...
Tonight, the media is sinking to new depths, if that's even possible. Clearly it is, as they continue to use the funeral, the life, the legacy of former President George H.W. Bush to attack President Trump. Now, after yesterday's powerful memorial service in Washington, D.C. for the late 41st president, well, your mainstream media still cannot stop using these events to demonize their current enemy, which is President Trump. And it's getting even more ridiculous. They're now going after President Trump over how he prays. I'm not making this up. To them, even standing silently during the Apostles' Creed at a funeral is cause for an attack against him. but it shows how the media is getting more and more unhinged, more hateful, and more divorced from any sense of reality or what their real job's supposed to be. And they wonder why nobody trusts them. And of course, the Destroy Trump media didn't stop there. Rather than focusing on the life, the accomplishments, the sacrifice, the service of the 41st president, well, the coverage looked like this. Now, if that's not egregious enough, so-called journalists over at ABC News even joked about a future funeral for President Trump. You can't make this up. Take a listen.
Perhaps a recognition in terms of his involvement in the proceedings by President Trump that he someday will be getting a similar treatment when he passes as a former president of the United States.
Probably a different tone in that funeral.
Perhaps.
He's going to choreograph it, so there may be more trumpets and
maybe he was taking cues. Yes, he would do it bigger. One would imagine.
It'd be the best presidential funeral ever. No one will ever have seen anything like that.
And as disturbing as that was, well, no one embarrassed themselves more than fake news CNN. Our friend Don Lemon said something so outrageous that even his colleague had to call him out. But this is all part of a pattern: demonize, denigrate, delegitimize every second, every minute of every hour of every day President Trump at all costs, even if it means using the passing of an American icon who, by the way, they were pretty mean to when he was alive, President H.W. Bush, to try and score cheap political points and further divide the country. Here with reaction. He is the media reporter from The Hill, Joe Concha, and former Secret Service agent, our friend Dan Bongino. Joe, let me start with you. They say he was a gentleman, and he was. But they didn't say nice things about him when he was alive. Being a gentleman back then, he was a wimp. You know, he was, he was out of touch. He didn't know how to use a scanner, which, by the way, was a fake news story back in the day. And so Reagan, Bush 41, McCain, even, Bush 43 while he was alive, they trash these men, utterly destroy them. Now they've died. They say nice things to create a veneer that they're bipartisan. And they're not.
George W. Bush was also called a racist before it was fashionable to call anybody a racist for the Willie Horton ad, if you remember that. Interesting stat, in 1992, 7% of journalists voted for George H.W. Bush. The rest, obviously, for Bill Clinton. You played some clips there. And Kimmel and Colbert were joking, and they're late-night hosts, so I kind of give them a pass on that. I still think it's classless, given that this was a state funeral held the same day. But ABC News, their senior analyst, a guy like Terry Moran, is making jokes while you're watching the procession of the casket of George H.W. Bush being taken out of a plane. And he's making jokes about President Trump's future funeral. Do these guys have any self-awareness? The answer is none whatsoever. So, Sean, this is why the media is not only mistrusted, but held in contempt by at least half the country. It's not even about mistrust anymore. It's like, I don't like these people. They don't have any class, and they're cheesy. That Don Lemon skit, I'm going to show you how I'm going to blow off Donald Trump by not shaking his hands. What is that? He's called an anchor on that network. He's not even an opinion guy.
Dan, I always said in the Obama years, especially on radio more than television, that it wouldn't be good for me to get an interview with then President Obama, because I respect the office. And I think he's a good father, probably a good guy. He's just a rigid, radical ideologue that governed horribly. It's a hard thing because I respected the office. I wouldn't be able to interrupt him like I can you or Joe. Let's put it that way.
And you do that.
Right.
So, I mean, what did you think of that?
Yeah, Sean, this is, you're right. I served as a Secret Service agent for, years, proudly under Barack Obama, because I believe in the constitutional republic, although I, like yourself, disagree with just about every ideological position he had. But this is what's known as the myth of the good Republican. You probably know what I'm talking about here. When a Republican is powerless or is left the political scene, what the media will do is they will paint their coverage of this Republican as something it wasn't. You were absolutely right. When George H.W. Bush was in office, it was merciless, the media coverage. I was just a young man back then, but I specifically remember it, and it was merciless. And they do it for a reason, Sean. They do it because of this foil effect, right? They want to make the current Republicans appear really bad, right? Why do you put a diamond on a black background? Because it seems shinier. So what they want to do is they do the reverse foil. They want to make these Republicans, especially Donald Trump, seem awful. So they go back and rewrite history about how they covered past Republicans. It's total nonsense. Everybody sees right through it.
All right, I got to roll. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Here with reaction. Fox News contributor, New York Post columnist Michael Goodwin is with us. Former White House press secretary Ari Fleischer, also a Fox News contributor. Here it is. Dems love Republicans when they're dead. Michael Goodwin. It's true. The fact is, it's true.
Yes, it is sad, Sean. You're right. That, and as I point out in the column, this all sounds similar. He's a hero. He's a genial gentleman. He's a patriot. He's a great American. And they said the same thing about John McCain when he was in his coffin. But when they were alive, this same media attacked them relentlessly, accused them of racism, of stirring up, fomenting trouble everywhere, of taking the country backwards. They attacked their Supreme Court nominees with the same way that Brett Kavanaugh was attacked. So there is a pattern, except when they die, then suddenly they were the great Americans. In this case, of course, they are being used. Those virtues are being used against Donald Trump. So it's really a double whammy for the Democrats in this day and age.
They did the same thing with Ronald Reagan, John McCain, Ari, with 41 and 43. You're very close to the Bush family. You were there when they were bludgeoning 43. I mean, that was a daily. I didn't think it could get worse, but it's gotten worse. Let me put it this way. When I die, all you liberals out there that hate me, don't change what you really think of me. Just say it. Just be honest. It's cool. It'll be all right. I'm going to give you a pass from heaven if I'm ever invited in.
Sean, here's the one that to me, speaks volumes. And it was the New York Times when George H.W. Bush, as president, went to visit a trade show and saw absolute brand new technology for scanning products at a supermarket. Nobody had seen it before. And the New York Times story, front page, Bush encounters the supermarket, amazed. Here's the lead of the story. The career politician who lived the cloistered life of a top Washington bureaucrat for decades is having trouble presenting himself to the electorate as a man in touch with middle-class life. This now is the man that the New York Times and others are holding up as a role model for all Americans because of his goodness, because of his principle, because of his civility. They mocked him relentlessly. And the thing about that story, it was 100% fabrication. That never happened. The New York Times wasn't even at the event, and that was not what Bush was amazed about. And the New York Times just ran that story, and they haven't corrected it yet. That's correct. Dan Rather lied about 43, fabricated information about Bush.
Well, let me ask you this. So if you're soft-spoken like 41, you're a wimp in the media's eyes. If you're iconoclastic and combative like Donald Trump, you're, a brute, and this is unacceptable to the office. So you can't win, can you? And now all of a sudden, now they hated 43, Ari, now they love him. Now, we'd take him back in a minute. No, they wouldn't. They would be all over him in 5 seconds.
No, and I remember in the 2000 campaign when George W. Bush was running against John McCain, the press was all for John McCain. And I remember thinking to myself, as soon as John McCain were ever to beat George Bush, they'll go against John McCain. They'll switch on a dime. And they did. And that's the way they always are.
Last word, Michael.
Well, yes. I mean, look at the way John McCain was treated when he ran against Barack Obama. Then he was just another dirty Republican. They loved him in 2000, and that's right. But by 2008, he was just another dirty Republican. Now he's dead, and so he's great.
Yeah, amazing. Save the lies if I ever pass away. Just speak the truth. Just say what you really feel.
Thank you. God bless you, and God bless America.